What's going on, Summoners? Welcome to another ProGuides video. I'm Kangas, and today we're going to take a look at the idea of one-tricking. We've all heard that it's great for climbing, but is it really what you should do to climb? We'll break down the pros and cons of being a one-trick pony, as well as how you can find your ideal one-trick if you choose so. So hit that sub button, and let's hop right into it. But before we cover the pros and cons of one-tricking, first we need to understand what one-tricking actually is. On a basic level, one-tricking is pretty easy to understand. You simply pick one champion and try to exclusively play them anytime they're available. While there's significantly more to being a proper one-trick than to just spam games under one character, in essence, that pretty much is it. While most players will tend to gravitate towards a main champion that makes up around 60 to 70% of their total games, often that main will change throughout time. But one-tricks tend to hover around 90% of their games being played by one single champion regardless of patch or meta. This number only really gets higher depending on how popular your role is or how versatile your champion is. Some people enjoy one-tricking champions like Yasuo that can be played top, mid, or AD carry. Some people like to play Vayne because they'll mostly play AD carry but can also flex top lane with enough practice. Regardless of what you decided to choose though, being a one-trick can be pretty beneficial to your ranked climb. I mean, there's gotta be a reason why lots of coaches and guides recommend actually climbing with this tactic. But of course, there's also negatives to one-tricking, and we'll cover that later in the video. But before we dive into the benefits and negatives, I want to remind you that you don't have to one-trick, but if you are going to, either way having a coach will help. So if you check out ProGuides.com, you can get access to hundreds of lessons created by some of your favorite pro players, and also get one-on-one sessions with our coaches. If you use the link in the description down below, you can pick up a 3-day free trial too, so check it out if you've ever wanted to. But back into the video, now that we have a better understanding of what a one-trick is, let's take a look at the list of benefits. Starting off, let's take a look at something that we like to call an attention or energy scale. To better understand, let's say hypothetically you have 100 points of attention and focus that you can put into multiple areas of play. Generally, these points will be divided up constantly during the game by focusing on things like mechanics, itemization, macro, wave management, CSing, etc. With this in mind, it's important to transfer points into more important categories by either making certain parts easier or just by making them second nature. For example, when you first start the game, it'll probably take about 60 of your points just to remind yourself to check your map. However, as you build up the habit, that will reduce to a measly 5 points, which means that now you have more focus to commit elsewhere. And building upon this point system is where the true power behind one-tricking lies. As a one-trick, you're able to understand your champion's abilities and damage to the T. Alongside being able to understand just how much damage you do, you're also able to learn combos and build habits on when and how to use them. A great example of this is how Riven players don't really have to think so hard about how to use certain combos because it's just muscle memory. To further push on this, once they have the combos committed to muscle memory, they'll eventually be able to use the correct combo at the correct time without having to think about it. Building all these small habits and muscle memories are what allow you to push your focus points into other areas, which can then improve your overall play. So I know that was a long explanation, but basically when you decide to one-trick a champion, you're able to build these habits much faster. I mean, think about it. If you're just committed to someone like Yasuo, you'll understand his combos and items. Then, as you continue to play him, you'll now learn when he spikes and how to win or avoid losing certain matchups. Once these all become easy for you to do, you'll be able to send the excess focus and brain power that it once took to other areas. This will improve your macro and your wave management, amongst other things. Just keep in mind that this only becomes better when you play champions that are inherently easier, since there's much less to learn and master, but we'll touch on that later. But before we continue with the video, we got our question of the day. Today's question, we want to know, do you think Riot should embrace the concept of one-tricking, or should they try to force players to diversify their pool? Honestly, there's pretty strong arguments for both sides, since diversity would allow for better autofill players, but forcing players into certain playstyles may make a lot of other players uncomfortable. But anyway, let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. So we covered the benefits, but obviously it's not only benefits. Everyone labels one-tricking as a holy grail for climbing the ranked ladder, but there's still quite a few problems with it as a tactic. For starters, being a one-trick pony limits your champion pool by a significant amount. Ideally, you want to be able to play a secondary role fairly well, and even then, you want to have a champion that you can default to if you've been autofilled. This has only become more apparent with the introduction of Riot's new punishment system for dodging. Before, you could dodge if you were in a role that you didn't want to play, or if your one-trick was stolen or banned. Now, you can't really afford to dodge more than twice unless you're looking to wait for the 12-hour lockout period. This means that your choices are either to coin flip the game and risk inting your allies, or dodging. Of course, you can still choose to learn other champions, but that comes at the detriment of mastering your one trick and or dedicating time to other areas of play. But alongside the issue of autofilling, there's yet another massive problem with one tricking. And simply put, it's that you're fairly easy to ban out and be put in a situation where you aren't even able to play your champion. This issue only becomes worse depending on what champion you play, how popular they are, and whether or not Riot's balance team pays them too much attention. If you choose to play Annie, you'll most likely avoid a lot of these issues, but if you play somebody like Katarina, you may find that your champ is banned extremely often, even if they're on the weak side of the meta. This is because whether a champion is strong or not often doesn't matter. What matters is if players find that champion fun to play against. A great example of this is that both Ezreal and Akali have fairly low win rates patch after patch, but they still maintain fairly high ban rates because people just hate playing against them. This means if you were to one-trick either champ, it'll be more difficult to play them without getting banned out. And of course, this issue only worsens if the champion is extremely popular, since now you'll either have your champion banned or the enemy will actually pick it away from you. So with some of the pros and cons covered, it still seems like one-tricking a champion is worth it, and that's because most of the time it is. That being said, it still brings up the question, why doesn't everyone one-trick? Well, a lot of people actually lack the time to be able to deal with the cons that come with one-tricking a champion, because if you're only able to play 1 to 2 matches a day, it's pretty unlikely that you'll want to have to deal with issues like getting banned out, getting your champion stolen, or having to suffer through the game of autofill. Alongside this, a lot of folks play ranked to climb, but they also play it to have at least some level of fun. And with this, that can be kinda hard if you only play one champion over and over again, unless it's a champ that you absolutely love and can play relentlessly. Plus, if you can only afford to play 1 or 2 games a day, it's unlikely you're going to want to limit yourself to a single champion and small pools. Instead, you want to play a range of extremely fun champs. Also, one of the bigger reasons that we've seen is a lot of people just have too much of an ego to become a one-trick pony. There's a lot of negative connotations surrounding the concept of one-tricking. Many view it as an elo-inflating skill, others think it's a cheap way to climb, and there's even a few that say if you're unable to play multiple champs, then you're not good at the game. With all that in mind, it kind of becomes more of a social status thing where people don't want to be labeled with all of these negative things, and for them, having these labels from strangers is more important to them than climbing the ladder. Now, this isn't always true, and sometimes people really only one-trick because they just love a specific champ. And while there is some validity to the statement that says, hey, if you only play one champion in your diamond, well, hey, ban away that champion, you're no longer a diamond player. And while, yes, this is true in the short term, the benefit of one-tricking is that you learn a lot about the game. If you know what your champion does in pretty much every possible situation, then the next time you pick up another champion to learn them, you already have a better frame of reference for what kind of possibilities this champion might have too. Nobody's one-tricking their way to going pro, but you can one-trick your way to high elos so that you can understand the game at a higher fundamental level. Then, this will speed up your learning process for other champions because you already know what most of them do having played against them. So now when you pick up those champions, you have a much easier time of learning them. So yes, if you hate one-tricks, I understand, but think of it this way. If you're trying to learn a game as quickly as you can, the efficient way to do it is by playing one champion and then expanding that champ pool. If somebody one-tricks a champion for 8 years, that's a different story. But whether you're a one-trick or despise the one-tricks, either way, we want you to join in on the conversation. So you can check out our amazing community Discord through the link in the description down below. Come chat with the community, give us your thoughts on if one-tricking is good or bad, and if you really deserve your rank based on how long you've been one-tricking for. But regardless of your thoughts on it, now that we've effectively broken down what one-tricking is, let's take the last step of tackling how you should choose your one-trick. Now, there's not a single checklist that you can follow to always get the strongest champion, but there's quite a few guidelines that can help make the process easier. First off, be sure that you already have your primary and secondary roles decided. This will really help us narrow down the champ pool. Now that you've decided on your roles, dive into the champions that fall into them. Obviously, you're going to want a champion that you enjoy and naturally falls in line with. If you can't seem to find one, find the champion that you think is the most enjoyable. While we do recommend picking easier champions like Garen or Annie, it's okay if you're looking for something with a higher skill ceiling like Draven or Yasuo. Just be aware, it'll take longer to learn them. Now, ideally, your one-trick will follow these guidelines. There'll be a champion that you enjoy and you wouldn't mind putting hours into. Pretty much make sure that you won't get bored too easily. Then, you're looking for someone that doesn't tend to have a high ban rate or a high pick rate. If you vibe really well with a champion that falls under these two, don't get too discouraged, you can still choose them. Just keep in mind that the repercussions we had mentioned earlier, you probably won't get them every game. But if you're still looking around and haven't seemed to find a champion that you enjoy yet, narrow them down into playstyles. For example, if you're a top laner, enjoy having a massive amount of HP and crowd control, look at the tank class and what champions are available there. Maybe you're an AD carry main who loves to be the star of the show with long range and extremely high damage. Well, then you should take a look at the hyper carries. Feeling more like you want to cosplay somebody from your favorite anime? Well, then look no further than the assassins, who are often found in mid and jungle. Once you've chosen a class that you enjoy, it should be pretty easy to narrow down the champion pool even further until you have just a few selections left. And last, but certainly not least, the most foolproof way of finding your ideal one trick is actually pretty simple, although albeit time consuming. Just try out as many champions as you can. With Riot's free champion rotation system and things like PvE, you're able to explore new champions over time so you can test them out without really committing your blue essence. If you find one that you really love, save up the blue essence, pick it up, and then there's your one trick. Now, before we end the video, I want to make an important note about one-tricking. Yes, it's extremely powerful, but there's a lot more to it than just spamming games. Like I had said before, you'll learn the game at a more accelerated rate if you're only focused on one champ. So be sure that you're making every game you play with that champion meaningful. Take into account what your combos are and when and how to use them. Write down how you beat certain matchups and what matchups you feel are the hardest and the easiest. Ask yourself why your champion builds certain items and not others. The entire purpose of one-tricking is to fully master a champion so you can play them like second nature and not have to think for a second about anything you do. Play your champ with meaning and purpose, and we assure you, you will see exponential growth in no time. And that sums up the video for today. Thanks so much for watching, everybody. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you enjoyed the content, and also join the ProGuides family at ProGuides.com or through the link in the description down below to check out our Discord. That's it for today, so best of luck on the Rift, everybody. Stay hydrated, and I'll see you in the next one.